But our next story is coming in Canada, again, from the Daily Wire. Again, I just like to use them, but you can find them in other locations. It's just Daily Wire has a certain spin on it, and I'm aware of that. All news has bias. But here it is. Military panel recommends wild discrimination acts against chaplains who religions do not accept woke orthodoxy. Now, that's where you call a bias, okay? What is a bias? That is using loaded language. Just a little bit of a lesson here. That's loaded language, obviously. Look at the words. The excessive use of wild would be in there. Woke orthodoxy. Now, there's a reason that they're using it that way. Against chaplains whose religions do not accept woke orthodoxy. So, in other words, it's using the idea that wokeness is a religion. I'll tend to agree with that. Wokeness is a religion. But let's go through this article a little bit. And I said I'm going to tie this one in with Chris Pratt, because there's a reason I'm going to tie it in with Chris Pratt. All right, a shocking new report from the Canadian National Defence Ministry Advisory Panel describes religion as a source of suffering and generational trauma, and directs officials not to allow military chaplains from religions that do not accept Canadian government's principles of diversity and inclusion. Ooh. And yeah, we've got, with Justin Trudeau, we've got, I don't know what you call it. People call him the feminist prime minister. I called him the selfie prime minister because he's always taking photo ops kind of thing. But I remember a couple of years ago when he was pushing on the, I used to call it the SEED program. It's not the SEED program anymore. It's the student grant program for places to hire students, where they changed the attestation saying that they must agree, short forming it here, they must agree with abortion. It's like, you want to get this money to hire a student, you must agree with abortion. It's pushing an ideology. That's really what it is. And so they have a specific ideology. When Justin Trudeau first got into power, the first thing he did was make 50% of his cabinet women. Didn't matter about anything else, they just had to be women. People thought that was great. And then if you watch it, within a couple of years, it was actually back to where it was before. Something like 70% men, 30% women. So he dropped it again. But it's like people, yeah. So they call him the feminist prime minister. So they have a very, you can classify it as a woke ideology. It says the defense team cannot justify hiring members of religions that it deems marginalize certain people or categorically refuses them a position of leadership, according to the report issued April 25th from Canada's Minister of National Defence, Anita Anand. Sorry to her if I obliterated her name. Names are sometimes hard. I do that with Bible names sometimes too, in Bible places. But what is it? What is the discriminatory thing? What marks them as discriminatory? Are we talking something so horrible that a place is saying, women, you can't come in? Are they saying religions that are men's only clubs? Are they saying religions that treat women as property? Is that what they're saying? Or women have a religion that has women have no rights? Well, not really. Let's look at their definition here from the article. The advisory panel has observed that there are varying degrees of misogyny, sexism, and discrimination woven into the philosophies and beliefs of some mainstream religions concerning currently represented in the cadre of chaplains. In the Canadian Armed Forces, that report continued, noting that the defense team cannot consider itself supportive of inclusivity when its employees as chaplains, members of organizations whose values are not consistent with the national defense's ethics and values. So you see, they're not pushing just against discrimination. They're pushing against a certain value set. We only want certain values. But again, even if those members express non-adherence to those policies of their chosen religion. But again, what is it that is so bad that they're against? Now it's going to defend the organization. It's going to define the organization. Because right now it seems like they're just going after religion. But let's look at some things. They were assembled in December 2020. The advisory panel was created to seek out the policies, processes, and practices that enable systemic racism and discrimination in the Department of National Defence and Canadian Armed Forces. Again, that would be a good thing. If there is something in the system that is systemically racist and systemically discriminatory based on certain things, it should be rooted out. If you have a business, I remember watching, I lost it now. Mel Gibson war movie about Vietnam. The name just escapes me at the moment. And they were talking, they got together, the wives were together, and they were talking about where we do laundry. And one of the women said, well, the army base, the army one works great, but you're only allowed to wash your white clothes there. And the other people looked at her kind of funnily, and he's like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, they got a big sign in the window saying whites only. And then there was a black woman in the group, and she says, honey, that means white people only. And the white woman got really upset and angry about this and heard about this. And that's systemic racism. That should be dealt with. That should be taken out. And that should be in any ways. It should be, you should not have, and I'm going to work with churches here because I'm more familiar with that. You should not have a church that is saying only white people, and you should not have a church that says only black people are allowed. It should be open to both. So that would be discriminatory. That is a good thing if they're looking at it from that perspective. But let's continue on in the article here. The Canadian government said in a news release, noting that its work has focused on anti-Indigenous and anti-black racism. If that's what they said, great. That should be true. LGBTQ2 plus prejudice, gender bias, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and discrimination against people with disabilities. Now, look at that list. Anti-racism, great. And that should be against anybody. I don't know why you really need anti-black racism. Just go anti-racism. So anti-Indigenous would be race against Indigenous would be racist. So I don't know why you really need that. Anti-Semitism is racism. So all these things. To root these things out, okay? But look at that list. Now we're going to show you how this is even inconsistent. Islamophobia is and anti-Semitism. So we're gonna work through that, okay? It came after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ordered the Ministry of National Defence to eliminate all sources of anti-Indigenous, anti-black, racism, LGBTQ prejudice, gender bias, and white supremacy in the Canadian Armed Forces. But here's what they're actually going after. Ray Penning, co-founder and executive vice prime minister of Canadian think tank Caucus, told the Daily Wire on Thursday that while the desire to change the culture of the Canadian Armed Forces is good, I agree, the antidote cannot possibly be the bigotry. Yet that's exactly what the panel recommendation on chaplaincy is, a recommendation based on the ad hominem attacks and caricatures of Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestant Christians, as well as many as Muslims and Jews. Remember, it was supposed to be against anti-Semitism and anti-Islamophobia, but this new sweeping regulation is going to hit Muslims and Jews. It's gonna. The report proposes exclusion in the name of diversity and inclusion. Again, that's a major problem with this. The defense minister needs to reject the recommendation on the chaplaincy publicly and firmly. Now, what are they after? What are they after? Okay, let's jump down here a little bit and see what is it. Okay, so again, let's really repeat that while the report acknowledges that religion can be a source of solace, optimism, and compassion, for many of the members of the defense team, it stresses that for some Canadians, religion can be a source of suffering and general traumatization. This is especially true for many lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and two-spirited members of the Canadian society. The report says, and Indigenous peoples have suffered unimaginably generational trauma and genocide at the hands of Christian religious leaders through the initiatives such as residential school and Indian day school programs. Now, I'm not going to deny that. That is true. But let's go, okay? What is it about women? What is it about... Okay, what are they talking about? Here it is. For example, the report says... So these are examples of misogyny and anti-women and things like that. The report said, apparently referring to institutions like Catholic Church. Some churches' exclusion of women from their priesthood violates principles of equality and social justice, as do sexist notions embedded in their religious dogmas. All right, so they want the Catholic Church, the whole Catholic Church, to change and say women are allowed to be priests. They want that. If they don't do that, what's their call? Throw out the Catholic clergy. Throw out the Catholic clergy from their organization. In addition, certain faiths have restricted tenets requiring conversion of those they deem to be pagan or who belong to polytheistic religions, the report continued. These faith dogmas and practices conflict with commitment of the defense team to value equality and inclusion at every level of the workplace. There's the problem right there. That means any clergy it doesn't even tries. Notice they said they back this up. Not even tries. Any clergy who holds to a religion, so be it Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Islam, Muslim, Judaism, who teaches that people have to, we'll use their words, convert into those things to be saved, that if they belong to any of those organizations, they should be removed because it's inconsistent with being inclusive. You see what the problem is? They're going to throw them out. They want to throw them out. Anybody who does not fit this certain ideology, if you're even slightly associated with, you're going to be thrown out. This is a witch hunt against Christians. Not just Christians, but any religion. Unless, of course, it says, hey, everybody's A-okay. Now, you said, what does that have to do with Chris Pratt? Because I'm going to show you, this goes over and beyond just in the military. This is expanding into our society. Here's an article. Nope, let me switch one here. Here's an article. Guardians of the Galaxy director addresses utterly false belief about Chris Pratt. Well, what is it about Chris Pratt? Let's go here. Down in the article a little bit. Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn defended Chris Pratt after a fan called for the actor to be replaced in the Marvel universes. Why did they want him to be released? Why was it that they want him to be replaced? Gunn was responding to a fan on Twitter Monday saying Pratt will never be replaced over utterly false beliefs. What is the belief? What is it that is so bad? What is it that Chris Pratt believes that would get him to be fired? Why is it? Well, it says the fan initially tweeted a picture of Pratt alongside Patrick Wilson, captioning the image, "Marvel, hear me out, just replace him." Just replace him. And Pratt plays the role of Star-Lord and will be in the next Thor, Love and Thunder. I don't know if I'll watch that or not. I do happen to like Thor. And in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'll have to wait to see what comes out, which is scheduled to be released in 2023. Here it is. The actor, 42, faced criticism in 2019 for what? For attending a specific church that people claimed was anti-LGBTQ+. For attending a church. Attending a church. So what do they mean, anti-LGBTQ? Well, I'm going to let Chris Pratt talk here a little bit. It has recently been suggested that I belong to a church which hates a certain group of people and is infamously anti-LGBTQ. He wrote, he says, nothing could be further from the truth. I go to a church that opens the door to absolutely everybody. Now let's go. He says, despite what the Bible says about divorce, my church community was there for me every step of the way, never judging, just gracefully accompanying me on my walk, Pritt said. They helped me tremendously, offering love and support. It is what I have seen them do for others on countless occasions, regardless of sexual orientation, race, or gender. Now, I just want to mention two things there. Notice Chris Pratt's divorced, yes. Notice he doesn't deny what the Bible says about divorce. He says, in spite of what the Bible says about divorce, despite what the Bible says, in other words, calling divorce a sin. God says in Malachi, I hate divorce. It calls it a sin. But why didn't the church judge him? This is what people expect. The church is against divorce. The church should be against divorce. This is why wouldn't the church throw him out? Why? Because he already knew it was wrong. He knew it was wrong. He knew that divorce was wrong. And that's a key thing. The church would teach that divorce is wrong. The Bible teaches divorce is wrong. Divorce is not God's standard. Divorce is not God's way. And he went through divorce. They didn't throw him out. They walked beside him and said, yes, you know it's wrong, but we're not going to throw you. We're going to love you anyway. And that's the point. But you see, what they're advocating, and this is what was being advocated by the Canadian Armed Forces, and as I said, it's making waves, is that unless the church affirms these things, so unless the church affirms divorce, unless the church affirms LGBTQ, unless the church affirms and says you are completely fine, that there's nothing wrong with this, they want it removed. They want to change everything. And this is what is coming. This is what is coming. It is being pushed on. And so any chaplains in the Canadian Armed Forces, and so this would include Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Muslim, Islamic clergy, Jewish clergy. Why? Because Islam holds that homosexuality is wrong. Judaism holds that homosexuality is wrong. Whether you like it or not, look, Leviticus 18, man shall not lie with a man, such an abomination unto the Lord. Now, you can argue whatever you want. You can say that about the church, and people do argue that the church doesn't follow the Old Testament, but Judaism does. Judaism follows the law. They follow the law of God. So that throws Judaism out. So wouldn't that be wouldn't that be anti-Semitic? You're discriminating against Jews based on the fact that they're Jewish? Well, Islam is against homosexuality. So you're not allowed to have Islamic clergy anymore, so you got to throw them out. Isn't that Islamophobia? See how it's inconsistent? It's very inconsistent. But it's this idea that if the church doesn't abide to this new woke religion, who has its own orthodoxy, has its own rules and regulations, what will they do? They will excommunicate you. And it doesn't matter if it's inconsistent with other beliefs. They'll excommunicate you. And it's coming also in, not just, as I said, in governments. And the reason I wanted to show the Chris Pratt is because it shows that it's coming even in our public. Where if you don't abide to this, we're not going to allow you to have jobs. We're not going to allow you to work here. We're not going to allow you to have this. And that is what is going on. And that's what we have to be aware of. Hey, I just want to thank you for watching. If you like the content, want to subscribe, like, tell a friend. Get the word out. Also, if you want more content, you can follow me on YouTube, on Rumble, or you can even download the Foundation with Steve Teed podcast and take me on the go, found on almost all podcast apps. This couldn't happen without you, and I encourage you, build on a strong foundation.